nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish. I'm hoping 25 hours a day, but something good works out, and I'm just like, dang. Think everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm like, dang. Think you might just know the way. I'm like, dang.
Welcome to Dang. I'm Todd Bridges.
And I'm Bettijo Bridges. And today we're talking about that infamous white powder. No, not that one.
Wait,
Todd.
yeah, don't be bringing that up. I'm about to say.
We mean
It's terrible.
sugar, the legal, deliciously addictive
It
one that's
is.
been messing with our brains since birth. And joining us today is the brilliant Dr. Nicole Avena, a Princeton-trained neuroscientist who literally wrote the book on sugar addiction. She specializes in nutrition, diet, and addiction and is on the faculty of both Mount Sinai School of Medicine and Princeton University. Her book, Sugarless, is a practical guide to kicking sugar without losing your mind or your sweet tooth. She's not trying to get us to all give up our sweet tooth. It's packed with a plan and recipes to help you break free. Today, Nicole is here to help us figure out why we can't stop at one cookie or 12. Right, Nicole?
Yeah, it's not easy. The struggle is absolutely real.
Oh, yeah, I know, because I'm not going to lie. I am addicted to not all sugars, but I mean, like these Reese's peanut butter cups from Trader Joe's, the dark chocolate ones. So addicting. And actually, because I'm hypoglycemic, so if I eat like 3 or 4 of them, it'll make me go right to sleep at night. So I use it as a crutch, but I probably just make that excuse up because I'm addicted to it.
I have a feeling that's a really bad sign, right?
Yes.
If it eats sugar and it makes them go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people self-medicate with sugar in different ways. You know, like using it to sleep, other people use it to like self-soothe or to like, just reward themselves. It's really, like a medication for a lot of people.
So let's start with the question that's probably top of mind for everyone right now. Is sugar really addicting?
It absolutely is. And I've been studying this for over 20 years. I started doing work when I was a grad student at Princeton, trying to understand how sugar affects the brain. And, the question was, is it potentially addictive? And maybe that's why so many people have a hard time cutting back on it. And so, if you kind of summarize the past 20 years of work that's gone into this area, really all the criteria that you need to meet in order to be diagnosed as having substance use disorder, like alcohol use disorder, or, any other type of substance, the criteria are met for sugar as well. So it absolutely meets the criteria for being an addictive substance. It's just a matter of now figuring out how do we cope with that.
Yeah, that's so crazy because like I was, teasing at just a second ago, it's totally legal. Like this addictive substance. It's not only that, but it's like in everything. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's in every single thing you want to eat. You have to really hunt to find that it's not there, right?
Yeah, you have to forage for foods that don't have added sugar anymore. And it's even in things like that don't really need to have sugar in them, right? Like, some of these condiments, like frozen pizza, that's a new one that I recently discovered has added sugar. I mean, stuff that isn't even sweet has added sugar in it. And, little bits here and there, it adds up. And I often say, if we had like a little bit of cocaine in like all of these things, we'd all be, flying. But it adds up just like the same way it would if you have a little bit here and a little bit there of other drugs.
Okay, so I'm reading your book, Sugarless, right now. I don't know if people can see it. Well, we're going to link over to it. It's so good. But I love the story in here, but tell us about what led you to study sugar.
Well, I got interested in sugar when I was a grad student at Princeton. I just started and I was meeting with my advisor, and, this is back in like the early 2000s, like 2000 and 2001. And at the time, a lot of people were struggling with obesity. You're starting to hear more about it as a public health issue. And I kind of thought, well, it seems like there's got to be more to it. It can't just be that people just, can't control their intake of food. It seems like maybe there's something about the food that's causing people to overeat it.
That makes
And
sense.
so, yeah, we got interested in thinking about that and looking at the food and not necessarily having the onus be on the person who's struggling to cut back on overeating. And that's really how it started. We started off looking at sugar because that was the one thing that by and large, people would say, wow, if I want to cut back, I can't because I have a sweet tooth. And that's the thing that like sort of throws me off my diet.
Yeah. And I think that in there you talk about how there wasn't a lot of research when you started about sugar addiction, right?
No, there wasn't any. And it's interesting to see how far things have swung the other way because now there's tons and tons of research studies that have looked at this, and the medical community like endorses and really kind of understands that yes, there's an addictive nature to overeating and to, food intake and obesity. But back when we first started it was very siloed. And, the obesity medicine people were studying obesity, and that was a metabolic condition. And the addiction people were studying addiction, and addictions were addictions. And, this whole idea of like wedding the two and talking about food being an addictive substance really kind of gave birth to this new area. And I think it's been good because it's helped a lot of people.
Did you run into a lot of roadblocks when you first started this, like people not wanting you to pursue this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I was pretty like early on in my career, I was still in graduate school. And so I remember getting advice from some of my other mentors, not my primary advisor, but just sort of other professors in the department that, oh, this is a silly idea. You should focus on something else. This is. But, I don't know. It just seemed to me like it made sense. It made sense that, there's got to be something about the foods that we're eating that's driving people to ignore all of this advice, especially if you think about people that are like really, really, really overweight or obese and, have bad diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and they want to lose weight. They want to stop eating these foods, but they're just compelled to go to them. So that's really where I think, the addiction piece for me, it clicked and it made sense. And I really wanted to kind of see, what we could understand about that to try to help people.
Did you have a background where addiction kind of came into play that made you think about it in that terms, or just curious?
No, it's interesting. I have met so many amazing people on this journey of doing research in this space. I really didn't come into it with any, interests in addiction per se. I did come in with an interest in neuroscience and the brain. I was doing a PhD in neuroscience. And so I was interested in like how the brain worked and what parts of the brain participated in motivating us to do certain things. And one of those things is eating. But, the addiction piece kind of just, I've always been fascinated by addictions too, because, we've seen a lot change in that field over the past 20 years. It used to be that people thought of addictions as like a moral failing, right?
Oh,
you
yes.
Just don't have the power. And now we know that that's not the case. It's a biological condition. It's a brain disease.
Yeah.
So I think that, I hope that that's kind of helped the food addiction piece has helped to kind of shed additional light on the fact that addiction is a brain disease. It's not a moral failing. It's not people that just don't have willpower. It's real.
I would like, I would like to find out, can you tell me, there's a difference in between sugars, right?
Yeah, big difference.
That's what I'm curious.
What do you mean?
Like there's different type of sugars, and different things that,
are you talking about like artificial sweeteners and sugars? Or are you talking about just like honey and
like
syrup and white sugar and brown
fructose sugar, corn syrup? There's a difference, and I'm curious to find out what are the differences in the sugars.
Well, in the book, Sugarless, there's like in the back, I have a chart where I list all of the different sugars. There's like over 300 different sugars at the printing of the book. It's probably even more now. And they're all different in some way, right? So, they're going to affect our brain differently. They're going to affect the way in which it makes us want to eat more of them differently. Some are going to be, we require less of them because of the sweetness intensity. And it's different and it's difficult to study actually because, there's so many out there that we kind of just lump them all into this umbrella category of sugar.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. And then when you think about the little differences between all these different sugars and you layer on top of that the artificial sweeteners, then these other like sort of newer non-nutritive sweeteners or low calorie sweeteners, like the monk fruits and the stevias and all these like things that are popping up, it gets really complicated. And these things are not exactly the same. They're different in ways that we really don't know much about.
Do you consider things like honey and maple syrup, like those natural ones, to be in that group of sugar?
Yeah, I mean, look, It's all sugar. I hate to say it, but it's all
Mm-hmm.
sugar, no matter how natural sounding it is. It's not about, I think, picking and choosing certain sugars. I think it's more about cutting back as much as you can on all of them. And
Gotcha.
that's really the key. There's, no magic bullet of like, oh, this is the sugar that you should have and it's the healthiest. I really think they're all affecting the brain and causing us
Same
to
way.
become dependent on them.
Gotcha.
And the best way to deal with it is really just try to cut back on it as much as you can.
Wow.
Because even things like the artificial replacements will still keep you craving that sweet.
Yeah,
Is that, yeah, that kind
absolutely.
of.
Yeah, exactly. Because your brain doesn't know that it's not real sugar. And I actually think that the artificial sweeteners are worse for you than real sugar. And there's been several studies that have been published over the past several years on this, showing that if you have an artificial sweetener, let's just say you have a diet soda, yeah, okay, it might save you like 200 calories right now, but you're more likely to consume more calories later in the day than you would have if you just had a regular
Mm.
soda that had actual sugar in it and calories. So, in the long run, it's really not helping you. And
Yeah.
it really, is changing the way in which your brain understands what you're eating. Your brain's expecting when it tastes something that's sweet for it to release glucose in your body, and then
Mm.
insulin will be released from your brain. And when that doesn't happen because it's a artificial sweetener,
Mm.
it really does mess with the signaling.
So does it make it like crave it more later? Kind of, it's like, oh, we didn't get any glucose from this, so now I
It,
want to have something else that's sweet. It's like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, well, it's yeah, exactly what you said. It's craving more because you didn't get what your brain was
Mm.
expecting to get from your
Wow.
body as a result of consuming that sweet taste.
Interesting.
Yeah, like for me, I can't drink diet sodas. My aspartame, my body's allergic to it. When I have aspartame, it affects my nervous system. So I can't fool with that stuff. So I mean, if I'm gonna have a soda, I might as well just have a soda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, for some people, I think the diet sodas and the diet drinks and, those types of sweeteners, they can be a crutch, if you will, right? If
Mm.
if it's a way to kind of wean you off of massive amounts of real sugar,
Mm.
yes, okay, use it that way. But I think that at the end of the day, the goal should be to just reduce your dependence on sweetness. And if you think
Mm.
about it, like you look at our, food supply these days, everything is super sweet. Everything has
Yeah.
to be sweet.
Yeah.
It's just that's the big problem we're facing.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was wondering about that because I'm like, sugar has been around for a long time. So what is it that makes sugar addiction more of a modern issue? Like where did this come from? Like how come it wasn't something we've been dealing with for like centuries?
Yeah, so such a great question, and I find it so interesting when you look at the history of sugar use, and we're starting to actually do some research on this, looking at this
Mm.
on a global perspective, because
Wow.
right now the United States is really the hotbed of ultra processed food. We
Oh
have a
yeah.
ton of added sugar because of all the ultra processed foods that we've become basically dependent on. And if you look at the history of when we started to see obesity rates kind of creeping up, and then map on that the amount of sugar that we're consuming per person, you can see that there is this like direct line going up together where
Yeah.
as we started getting more and more obese, we started consuming more and more sugar. And
Mm.
it has been introduced into so many products that it's just now like so commonplace. And so
Wow.
even though we used to, use sugar sparsely, it was something back in like, the 1800s, you'd bust out the sugar at Christmas or,
Yeah.
during a special
Yeah.
occasion, right? People would give gifts of fruit, right? That because it was just so rare to have access to, those types of things. It's just a different world now. We have access to these things all year long, and all of the processed food is really what's kind of promoting this addiction that, you would think would have happened years and years ago, but it's really about the availability, right? There's just so much of it and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an accessibility thing.
What's one of the things that you found that there's sugar in that may be hard for people to believe?
Bacon. Bacon. Bacon was a
Regular
big one for
bacon?
me. Yeah, because regular bacon, like now I'm not talking, like the fancy bacon that you'd buy that's like
Yeah.
got, whatever, like
Yeah, yeah,
specialty.
yeah.
No, just like bacon. Like if you look at the ingredients list, bacon, salt, sugar. I mean,
Wow.
it's just again, you have to kind of ask yourself like why. And there's a couple reasons. One, I think that the food industry is kind of keen on the fact that, sugar, people like sugar. So let's add it. Why not? It's cheap. We can, throw it in, and it's, something to get people to like the product even more. But sugar's also really good at masking the taste of other things that don't taste that great, like preservatives.
Yeah.
So, it's really good at masking those nasty flavors that, kind of would come through due to all the different things that are being added to these processed foods.
Yeah. So I've done where I don't eat sugar. I got off of it during COVID, like right as that was starting to happen. It was like January, February timeframe. I think as like a New Year's resolution, me and my kids, we had all done one of those, like, I don't know if it was like Whole30 or something, where we were trying to get off and not do sugar. And we were like counting down the days to when it was like going to end. At least my kids were. I was like I was happy with the results, but it was like literally COVID was hitting and we were supposed to be starting back on the sugar. And the kids were like so excited. I was like, bad news, guys. We're not having sugar back. Like, I'm not going to let you start eating sugar when there's this global pandemic. Like, we're sticking with this healthy. And we did it with the kids, I think did it with me for a few months. This was before I knew Todd, actually. And then as they gradually, we kind of followed like an 80-20 eating rule that I've heard about that. But the way I saw it was, I was like, okay, the 80% of clean is like at home, because the 20% is when you're not here, right? Like, I don't want to do 80-20 at home, because at home I can control like what I'm eating a lot easier than when I'm out. So we were kind of doing it like that. So at home we were eating really clean. No, like, I was reading all the labels really carefully. I'd gone through my pantry and cupboards and thrown away. And then I think the kids, they were eating more like when they'd go to friends' houses, and I like loosened things a little bit because they'd come home and be like, oh my, they were like binging when they would go other places. And so they kind of got to where it was more just moderate. I would try to get them to eat healthy at home, but I stayed off the sugar for a couple years. And then right before our wedding, it was easier for me to get off of the sugar too, because I have to eat gluten-free and dairy-free. I have intolerances to both of those. So, and I think if I had never developed those, I don't think it would have been possible. Like, it was like, I'm already can't have the donut because of the gluten. So, or I can't have the ice cream. So it made it a little bit easier, because you're trying to just find like these replacements and nothing's really that good. And so then it's just like, just forget it, no sugar. But it was right before our wedding. My girlfriends had thrown me a little, bachelorette party, and they had assembled this tray of goodies, and it was like gluten-free and dairy-free. It just had sugar. And I kind of was like, well, it won't hurt. I'll just have a few of these. And I started eating the sugar, and then we had, like our wedding cake, and then it was the holidays, because we got married in September. So it was holidays. And so by January, I was full blown, like, I couldn't stop eating sugar again. And I just finally, this March, like 2 months ago, I started like, okay, that's it. Because I'd gained like 15, 20 pounds. And the only difference was that I started allowing myself to eat things that had refined sugar in them.
Yeah, and that's what, I went to the doctor today, and she's like, you have to lose weight. I'm like, what? She's like, no more, you need to lay off the sugar. I'm like, that is my crutch. Sometimes I just like something really sweet, and I guess it's my addiction, to sugar. I
mean, I could feel it. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I honestly think, just having done this work for a bit of time now, people that cut out the sugar, if you cut out one thing, if you cut out the sugar, it really, really seems to promote people losing weight. And again, especially now, because so many of our foods are these highly processed foods. If you think about it, like when you cut out the sugar, you're cutting out all the junk food.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
And then, people might say, oh, but, it's not like really healthy to eat steak all day long. But you know what? You can only eat so much steak.
Yes.
Right? You're not going to.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
A ton of it. And so your portion control is going to be more easily managed.
Yeah.
When if you're having a little steak, okay, fine. But you're thinking like, okay, if it's like ice cream, you can eat like half a gallon, right? The portion control just goes out the window when it comes to sugar.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big piece of it.
You're absolutely right. I was just up visiting my sister. She lives in a small town in southern Utah, Cedar. And they have one of those Dollar General stores. I don't even know if we have them here. They're kind of a small town staple store. And we were in there, and there was like all the food aisles. And I was literally just kind of like walking through the food aisles. She was looking for something. And I was like, I don't think I can eat anything in any of these, in like any of this food that's here at the store at all. Like because it's all just like the common, and everything there had, sugar or gluten or dairy in it.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I can't eat any of this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who live in, more rural parts of the United States
Yeah.
where they're in these like food deserts where all the food is really bought in stores like that, right? They're
Yeah.
like not close to a grocery store where they
Yeah.
could just, have this array of fruits and vegetables. And so if you think about it, like people, are really, really struggling to get access to, healthy fruits and vegetables and, healthy options. They're kind of forced into eating that stuff because it just happens to be what's close by and what's available.
Right, unless they happen to be farmers or something, and that's where like they're getting stuff off of their own land. You're right. It's absolutely like it's just whatever is in that preservative packed aisles of stuff.
I go on these little kicks where, like, say I may be eating a bowl of cereal every night. And then, like, now I'm not eating cereal anymore, but now it's on these Reese's peanut butter cups. So I kind of move around things, because I'm in the program and I have 32 years sobriety, so that could be, it's
your crutch.
It's probably my crutch, probably,
Yeah, well, I mean that, if you go back and look at the original like Alcoholics Anonymous blue book from like the 1930s,
Yeah.
the advice that's in there is to eat sweets. If you
Yeah.
have an alcohol
Really?
craving,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, oh yeah. And so that's like one of the pieces of information that I often highlight when I'll like present this to groups and talk about the research is that we've known since like the 1930s that, sugar can help you beat like alcoholism, right? So what does that tell us about sugar and how powerful it is?
Yeah.
It could be a substitute for alcohol.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's so true because the timing of when I was going off that sugar with COVID and all of that, I was actually just finishing from my divorce from my first marriage too. And I actually remember thinking, like, I have nothing to turn to. Like, there's nothing to make me feel good because I wasn't eating the sugar and I don't drink alcohol. Like, none of those. And I was like, I just need something. What do you recommend?
Right. It just, what it is? I think it fills the void, but the problem with sugar is it's like a socially acceptable way to fill a void for a variety of different things. So if you're depressed and upset because you're dealing with a divorce, like eating sugar can make you feel better. If you're overcoming alcohol or drug addiction, eating sugar can make you feel better. And everybody kind of just accepts it as like, okay, well, it's better than, something else. But I think we're starting to learn now that it might not be better because if you look at the long-term health consequences that come from overeating sugar in terms of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and all these other things that, come along with it, even like mental health, right? I mean, we're now learning about how sugar affects your mood, how it affects cognitive functioning. So it's moved beyond just being about obesity and like, sugar, if you eat too much of it, it'll make you gain weight. It's now more about like how sugar affects the quality of life. And, should we really view it as being this like socially acceptable drug that we just let our kids use and we use when we're, and not feeling great about something?
Yeah. And that we celebrate with it. It's like such a part of our culture and everything that we do that it's a big part. What do you think, as you've done the research that you've done, is there been a certain thing we've been like, oh my goodness, this is crazy? Like certain issues, like physically or like mentally, health-wise, they're like, if everybody could just know this one thing about what sugar does.
Yeah. So one of the things that always stands out in my mind, and I don't know if it's because like my kids were really young at the time when we were doing these studies, but when we were doing some studies looking at rats, we were doing rat studies because, we're looking at the brain and we had the rats that were eating sugar and then we took the sugar away, but we let them have a choice of having amphetamine or having cocaine or having alcohol. And sugar was essentially like a gateway drug.
Wow.
All of the rats that had experience with sugar, they grew up to overconsume these other drugs and have this like higher rate of administering these other drugs.
Wow.
And we know it's because it's affecting the brain dopamine system. Like sugar affects dopamine in the brain, which is the rewarding neurochemical in the brain, in a way that's like a drug of abuse. And that's been shown over and over again. And so when you're priming the brain with sugar in like little kids, right, by feeding them sugar every day, all day, and then we, wonder like, okay, well, why are they getting into drugs and alcohol and all these things? And why are they developing these other addictions later in life? I mean, sugar is really setting them up for that. And so to me, that's the like piece that I feel like if people knew about, they would be like, wow, we have to like get a handle on this, because we're basically just creating a generation of like future addicts or future children that are going to grow up to become adults with all these major problems that are hard to deal with.
How have you dealt with that personally? Because I didn't realize you have kids. As a mother, how did you deal with that with your kids?
So we have 2 daughters, and my older daughter is 16, and the little one just turned 10. And so I feel like, at different stages of life, it's been sort of different messaging, right? And for me, because they're girls, and I would have been this way if they were boys too, it's never been about your weight. It's never been about your size. It's always been about health. And so from a very early age, we just kind of raised them to police themselves. So, if you went to school today and it was Susie's birthday and she brought in cupcakes and you had a cupcake, don't think about having or even asking for a cupcake for dessert tonight, or having a cookie, or you had your dessert at school. And really just kind of helping them to sort of see the limits. That's kind of how it started. And then as they got older, now that my older one's a teenager, then it became the conversation around all of these like fancy coffee drinks, right? That are like a bazillion calories and a bazillion grams of sugar.
Oh yeah.
And it's like trendy to do that, right? If you're a teenage girl, like if you go to Starbucks, you get one of those drinks, right? It's like what people do. But I don't think that the average kid kind of understands like how much sugar is in a lot of those things and how bad it is for you, and how basically like they're kind of becoming part of this machine of like marketing that is really just realized like, oh, this audience of teenagers like wants to come in our store. So what can we do to keep them coming? And, it's just about like helping them to realize like, the advertising of these types of foods is drawing you in. So you have to be mindful of that, and just sort of looking at it from the bigger picture as they get older. And that's kind of how we've handled it. We don't have like a zero sugar policy or anything like that, but we don't have it in the house. I mean, we don't like, really, carry a lot of those types of foods at home. We do kind of like what you were saying, Betty Jo, where we have like the more of like the 80-20 approach. So try to cook and eat really healthy at home. But then if we go out to dinner, if it's a celebration or somebody's birthday or something like that, and we want to have a piece of cake, then we don't have to feel like so bad about it, because we know that we have like overall it under control. We're not just, eating it haphazardly.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that too, that you don't just be like, okay, no, never, ever, because I just feel like it's so unrealistic.
It is. And I talk about this in the book. There are some people who've taken this sort of cold turkey approach where they're just like, no sugar ever, right? And then just completely cut it out. And I think if that works for people, great, good for them. But I think the average person, that's just not going to work for, because there's so much sugar in things where we don't even realize the sugar's in there, right? It's hidden in so many things. So, it's easier with things like drugs and alcohol. Like you kind of know where the alcohol is, right? Because the beverages have to say it has alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And
right.
you kind of know where the drugs are, right? Because nobody's hopefully sneaking drugs into our food. But with sugar, it's like these gray areas of like, well, does this have sugar in it? And does it have too much sugar in it? Does it, like, I don't think eating apples is bad for people's health. I think it's actually good for your health, but apples have sugar. So, where do we, draw the line?
So, and I had done some research, like kind of what had led me to do that before, where we were going off the sugar, kind of before the COVID hit. I'd read a book called Nourishing Traditions, and I didn't read the entire book. It's like super long. I don't know. Have you heard of that book?
I haven't read it.
Okay. It's an interesting look at kind of like how people have nourished themselves through like from ancient times to now. And it kind of highlight some key points that kind of coincide with research that you've talked about. But one of the things that, like, my key takeaway from that book was how when we're eating sugar that is like a processed, refined sugar, like, I mean, I guess if I explain like naturally occurring sugar in like an apple, for example, the way this is how the book had explained it, the sugar is combined with other like vitamins and minerals that our body needs to be able to digest and use and fully use that sugar. Whereas when we take the sugar that's like that white stuff powder from the bag, when we're having that added sugar, all of those vitamins and minerals have been stripped away. And so it's actually like taking, it explained it in like a financial sense. It's like it's taking a withdrawal out of vitamins and mineral stores of your body in order to actually process that sugar through. And so if what happens to your bank account, if you just spend and you don't make deposits, well, you get overdrawn. And it kind of explained it that way, and it like made so much sense to me. And that was sort of where I arrived at, like the way that we handled it was I said, okay, if I'm using this, if I'm making a recipe for like a meal, if it's for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and it's supposed to be nourishing, like that's the whole point of what we're doing, then I'm going to use something that is more of like a natural whole sugar. And it had helped identify those as like true like honey that is, you know, good real honey, maple syrup, using like things like apples or bananas, like whole fruits to sweeten. And then it talks about like it was really hard to find at the time, but it was like a rapadura type of sugar that was like, it kind of looks like a brown sugar, but it's supposed to be like the complete whatever. And and I would use those for situations. Oh my goodness, I'm getting a call.
You didn't turn your phone off on it.
I didn't put it on Do Not Disturb. Sorry, Adelie. Hope she doesn't call back again. So if it was for one of those meals, then I used, in place of the sugar, I would use one of those sweeteners. And depending on the recipe, like I would opt for something different. Like if I'm making like a baked oatmeal for breakfast, I would use frozen bananas, that kind of thing. And then if it was for like a birthday cake though, and it was literally just like then I would go ahead and just use the sugar. And I was motivated from both like needing the recipe to turn out like I was expecting, because it gets a little tricky when you're using some of those substitutes, and also because it's expensive sometimes. Like I have these 4 kids, didn't have a lot of money, and so it was like, how do I, stretch some of these things that are a little bit more expensive for my family, but still focus on getting the nutrition that we need.
Yeah.
And
I love that. And I think that is what, and it wasn't hard, right? I mean, it's just about like making these like small changes, right? Where you can like, instead of adding sugar, you add this instead. And I guarantee your kids probably didn't even realize it. Or if they did, they just got used to it after like 1 or 2 times, right? So I feel like there are so many little swaps that people can make and little things that they can do. And you don't have to do them all overnight, but if you can kind of implement them one by one and just slowly like chip away at all the added sugar. I recommend people start with the beverages, because the beverages are the worst. The beverages are just a vehicle for like over consuming sugar, because you can drink something and you don't get satiated from it. Whereas if you have to chew on it, it's going to take you longer, to feel full if you're drinking something versus if you're eating something. So it's really just about, like you're saying, making those small changes, making these little tweaks. And it's not about depriving yourself or not ever having cake. It's about like just figuring out how can you do it in a way that's got less sugar. And then it's still, I look at it like intentional sugar. Like if I'm going to eat sugar, I don't want to passively be eating it in, my bacon and English muffins and things like that.
Because I didn't realize it was there even. Yeah.
Exactly. I want to be intentional about it and say, okay, if I want a cookie, I'm going to have a cookie.
Yeah.
That's the big problem, is that I feel like most people are just unintentionally overeating sugar all day long, and they often don't even realize it. And then if they do realize it, they're hooked on it and they can't stop. So it's just a big problem.
So you think that getting rid of the sodas, which is too bad that like like you were talking about the coffees, like the Starbucks, but there's also those places like, what are the soda places that the kids love to go to? Like Dutch Bros and
Swig.
I don't know if they have those in New Jersey, but they're like soda places.
And I tried one of those things, and it's way too, I'm like, this is
because they
way
take
too
soda
sweet.
and then they add like the syrups, like the coconut syrup and
I'm
the
like, that is
raspberry
crazy.
syrup, and then the cream, and so it's like this drink that's literally loaded.
Oh, it's like so sugary, I couldn't even drink it. I didn't like it.
And it is, like you said, it's like kind of the cool, fun activity. Like, what are we doing? We're all going to go get drinks at, you know?
Yeah.
But I do like a lot of sparkling water. I love that. And then it tastes so good. There's no sugar in it.
Yeah, that's the best. I'm a big sparkling water fan too.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that, you know, the thing about like the kids and like these like sort of trends with these drinks, like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, I approach it from, it seems like it's this innocent thing, right? And if you say, no, you shouldn't do that, you're like that parent that's like no fun, right? But I really wish people would really look at what's going on in terms of the brain. I mean, I'd love to take, you know, one of those drinks that you're talking about and then take a kid after they drink them and put them in a brain scanner. And like, if the parents could see basically like the fireworks of like dopamine going on, I think they would think twice before letting their kids do it. I think the kids might think twice, knowing that they're basically messing with their brain. And it's like this sort of like quick reward that's not really doing much for you other than just basically setting your brain up for struggles later on.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think what you're talking about too, and like at least getting them to think about how often do I really want to go get that drink, right? Like if I want to go with my friends, you know, this is what we're doing, fine. But like, are we going to drink something like that every single day? Yeah. And energy drinks are actually another one that drives me crazy because like there's been so many of like the kids, like my son is only 12 and kids on his football team, it's like there's this energy drink and it's so cool to drink. And I'm like, you can't drink an energy drink. Like that's going to be so bad. And there's the kids that have had the heart attacks because they're drinking them like they're soda. And I mean, they've got the sugar and all of that caffeine.
Yeah, well, my kid, my idea of it is if a kid needs an energy drink, he has natural energy. Right. You know, it's when you get 60 years old when you need some type of energy to get moving for the rest of the day. Like, you know, I messed up last night. I woke up this morning early at 3 a.m. to take my dogs out, and I didn't go back to sleep. And I am dying now. I am literally dying now. Because it's like I should have just went back to bed and slept. You know, when you get older, you just need those more hours. You know, you need some sleep.
Yeah. I agree. I think that there's a place for some of those drinks. And the caffeine content is, you know, 12-year-olds could be small people. Like they don't need that much caffeine. It can really, you know, it can be too much. But again, it's kind of become normalized.
Yes,
like I see the same thing. You know, it's happening everywhere. And, you know, it just kind of makes me wonder, like, you know, what's next, right? I mean, it's just, I think a lot of it's the marketing. I think a lot of it is, you know, the way that these different beverage companies are promoting the products towards certain demographics. I mean, you know, they're not promoting them toward me, right? I mean, they're promoting them toward young people. And I think that's their audience. And they know that if they can get somebody hooked when they're 12 years old, they have a customer for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
It's tobacco all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so similar that it's actually really crazy that we can, you know, we just had to change it to something sweet and then now it's
Well, you know, what's
fine.
interesting is now what makes more sense that now that you said that about the tobacco is that when you think about all these cigarette companies that own these food corporations, which that's why they're making it highly addictive so they can get customers for life. Now it makes so much more sense why they own them, why they bought them. Like, why would a cigarette company buy, you know, a food company? Because they want to put those things in there that'll make it more addicting and make people want to eat it.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
I talk about it. I teach a class, a health psychology class, and I spend like several lectures talking about the history of tobacco. And sometimes I feel like in the beginning, my students, like, you know, underage or undergrad students are like, you know, 19, 20 years old, you know, they're like, why are we learning about this? Like, nobody really smokes cigarettes anymore, right? But if you look at the history of it, it's so interesting because it's exactly the same thing that's happening now when it comes to big food. And, you know, right when it started to go bad for tobacco in terms of the lawsuits and the warning labels and the government starting to wake up and realize, yeah, guess what? This is killing people. That's when food came in. That's when sugar started going up. And that's when obesity rates started going up too.
That's crazy. Well, and it's interesting too with the sodas that we're talking about. And I think that they are really hot because like the whole Starbucks, the idea that, coffee isn't really supposed to be something that teens and kids should be drinking. So I think these sodas are like this harmless quotes, air quote, alternative to like getting a coffee is getting, we'll just get you a soda. That's more kid friendly. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it's just interesting to see, the coffee chains like kind of capitalizing on that, right? And they're realizing like, well, like the kids aren't going to necessarily get coffee because their parents probably say, oh, you're too young to have coffee. That's too much caffeine. But here, have this like sugar bomb instead.
I like that saying. Have this sugar
Yeah,
bomb.
but it seems like that's the way it's going. That's what's happening.
And they're already just like, now, you got kids. I had kids that were 10 that they wanted for their birthdays was like a Starbucks gift card, right? So they could go get their fix there. Oh yeah. It's a mess. Well, what's the first step? What is the first step someone should take to reduce their sugar intake?
Well, I really think the first step is understanding how much sugar you're eating in the first place, because I think a lot of people are in either denial about it or they're just not aware because they're not paying attention. They don't know that, if you look on the label, it's not necessarily going to say sugar as an ingredient. It could say, raspberry concentrate. And you might think, oh, this is good. It has fruit in it. Well, guess what? Raspberry concentrate is sugar. It's a code word for sugar.
Yeah.
So just really familiarizing yourself with all the different names of the added sugars so that way, you can understand what products you're eating or what products you like at your house or what ones have sugar in them. And then it's really about like kind of just like I said, just chipping away. And it's not about depriving yourself. It's about coming up with alternatives that you're still going to enjoy, but they're just going to have less sugar. And I also often suggest like, people when they start to really start with those beverages, because there's a lot of people who, and I'm sure you've seen these people too. You go and they're ordering a coffee in front of you and they're getting like 8 pumps of sugar or 8 pumps. And it's a lot. So just maybe do 6, maybe do 4, maybe do 2 and wean yourself off.
Yeah.
You have to, because I mean, it's just not sustainable to have like those types of beverages on a regular basis. It's going to add up. And if you kind of layer that on top of all the other things that people are eating, even healthy things like yogurt's a big culprit. People think yogurts are healthy, and there are some that are healthy, but a lot of them have a lot of added sugar. I mean, there are some yogurts I've seen where I would rather eat ice cream than have the yogurt because
like nutritionally, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And then so I love that for beginning. And then do you feel like, I think just because of like the addictive nature of it, if you want to get yourself to a healthy place, do you need to do like a fast or a break? Do you feel like, do you recommend that to people, friends or whatever that are asking you?
I think some people, find that they do need to do kind of like a dry January situation, right? Like where you talked about how like, you kind of for January gave up sugar and, people often do that with like alcohol, and it's a great way to kind of kickstart like, okay, I'm realizing how much of this I was eating when I don't eat it. I see, how dependent I was on it. And now that's motivating me to kind of break away from it. So I think that can be useful for some people to kind of kickstart it, but I don't think it's necessary. I really think that, from a psychological perspective, the slow and steady wins the race. And unfortunately, we don't live in a society that appreciates that, right? We want that like quick fix. Like I want to lose 10 pounds by
tomorrow,
next weekend.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, the reality is that the brain doesn't work that way. And so if you want to change your brain and change your behavior, you have to do these sort of slow, successive, approximative steps. It's not going to be just this like overnight, boom, it's done. So I think that slow and steady is really the way to go. And then those behaviors are going to stick and your mindset's going to change. And it's going to just make it easier for you to keep going and to keep those new good habits in place.
Okay, Nicole, I am so curious because you were like college age when you started doing all this research. And I'm guessing that before that, you probably weren't thinking all that much about your intake of sugar. When did you start to care? And when did you be like, okay, I need to cut back? And how did that
Yeah,
go?
no.
Tell me about that.
I grew up in like a typical 1980s, lower middle class family where my parents just didn't really pay much attention to what we ate. And, there was always soda in the house and we had a lot of, takeout and things like that. And it wasn't until I got to college when I was like really on my own for the first time that I started to realize, like, you don't have to have soda with dinner. Like, you can actually have water. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
I just had how I grew up. We just
Yeah.
grew up with it all over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
And so I started to kind of get exposed to like other, just the way other people ate. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe I don't have to eat this way. And so for me, it was in college. And then I started doing research on the brain. And then I went to grad school and started looking at sugar and other aspects of nutrition. And that really kind of solidified it. So I think, though, that my childhood experience with having like this, basically like overdoses of sugar available all the time, it did have an impact because I have that experience. And I know that, just kind of looking at like my parents and looking at, my own health, I feel like I've feel so much better now as an adult, to be honest, than I did as a kid. And I think a lot of it has to do with the types of foods that we were eating.
Yeah. Well, what does that look like for you too, as you set up your household? I mean, starting traditions and stuff with your family, knowing what you knew about sugar, what was that like as far as?
Yeah. So we, I think a lot of it, so I try to do a lot of traditional things with the girls, right? So my husband and I are really into gardening and, we're fortunate enough that we have like a fairly big piece of land so we can, plant a garden and we can grow things from seed. We have fruit trees. So we can kind of do all that stuff. And I'm like a scientist geek and I just like that, like nature stuff. So I've tried to kind of impart that on our kids so that they see, look, we grew strawberries to grow and look at how delicious they are. And we can eat these strawberries and look how much work it was to get them to grow and like really appreciate the food. And, just cooking at home and kind of teaching them the basics. And I think that kind of a more traditionalist approach has allowed them to be interested in that and not necessarily be like, oh, well, let's just get pizza for dinner, or oh, let's just get takeout, or let's kind of think about like where the food comes from and how we can make it and why it's healthy. That's the approach that we've taken, and it's, I think, been good. I hope. I mean, you never know with kids, right? You kind of have to see how things go. So check back in like 10 years and I'll let you know where we are.
Yeah. Like how it works. It's like your long-term experiment right there. Yeah.
It is.
I love it. Well, this has been great. Do you have any other questions, honey?
No, I just,
Are you ready to give up sugar?
No. Nope.
No, but are you going to make small little incremental changes like giving up the peanut butter cups? That's a good
no,
one.
that's probably a hard pass on that one. But there's other things I can definitely give up. I could probably give up.
Break them in half. Just have half of one.
Oh no, I like the whole one.
How about instead of having three, you can have one?
I will give up when I go out, I will treat myself when I have dinner with a soda. I will do that. And I drink, mainly at home, I drink water all day and sparkling water.
Yeah.
But I will make a decision to stop drinking soda when we go on dinner. I'll just have water with lime, lemon.
Good.
There you go. That's the first step.
Yes.
I love it.
Perfect. Well, we do a segment each week called ToddFlix, where Todd tells us what he's been binging on TV.
Yeah.
So, why don't you take it away?
And my ToddFlix for today is I've been watching a show called Narcos, which ties into sugar and addicting to sugar because it's like, if the demand wasn't so big in the United States for drugs, you wouldn't have things like this happening. These kind of, because it's based on true stories, and it's like, they're having this flood of drugs coming in the United States, but the demand is so big in the United States that this is the reason why this, goes. But it's such a great show, but I didn't, I kind of watched it in reverse. I watched Narcos Colombia first, which I should have watched Narcos Mexico first.
Did that one come out first, Narcos Mexico?
No, well, the Colombian one came out first, but they're both out now. I should have watched the Mexico one first.
Why?
Because the Mexico one leads up to everything else.
Oh, okay.
But what's really crazy about it is finding out how many governments are involved in this stuff. Wow. That's the crazy stuff. It's really quite interesting.
I think it's funny. We have these notes written here, and I didn't even know what you were going to say about the sugar being a gateway, but we said this show Narcos makes sugar look like a gateway snack, but but so funny that I had written that before. For you.
And it's
but
definitely,
it's true.
Yeah.
It is. She's kind of thinking it is like that's crazy.
It definitely. I could believe that. But
who stars in Narcos?
Starring in Narcos. Pina stars in the. His name is Pina.
It says it's Wagner Moura is Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, that's Pablo Escobar. But the police officer is what is it? Yeah, Michael Pena and that's the one that's also in Mandalorian. He plays the big police officer and the one trying to bust Pablo Escobar.
Okay, cool.
But it's just what's so crazy is that I can see now that I think in the United States if the demand for sugar wasn't so big, we'd probably have less of a situation
with the drugs. Maybe I wonder.
I think so because we just the show is so much fun. It's like a roller coaster. And 90% of the time they speak in Spanish, so you have to read the subtitles. Because if you don't speak Spanish, you're not going to understand it. But it's just such a good show. I think that people would. But you have to also
it's an American show. Like you don't want to scare people away. They have the subtitles, so you can see the.
Yeah, because they speak English both ways.
You don't have to speak Spanish to
watch
the show.
But I think what made me interested in learning is that how much governments are involved in this. Yeah. That's the scary part. How much they will say, no, leave that guy alone. Yeah, we know what he's doing. Yeah, but the CIA would say, leave that guy alone. We need him for his routes that he knows how to fly the plane under the radar so he can ship guns off to people we want to get him to.
Yeah, that was the Tom Cruise movie too,
Same
right?
thing, yeah.
What was that
Tom Cruise character was in this movie.
What is that movie?
That's American Made.
Yeah. American Made with Tom Cruise.
That
is
guy
about
was
the
in this
same
movie.
Sort of stuff. Yeah.
And so it shows you how much involved that, as long as it doesn't personally affect people in certain situations, then they're okay with it. You know what I mean? Which is really bad.
Yeah.
But it's such a good show. I enjoy it. The acting is brilliant. The guy who played Pablo Escobar is brilliant. And right now I'm on the part where El Chapo, the guy we have in prison now in the United States, I'm watching that right now. That's
interesting.
Yeah, it's actually really good. So
people can binge
Narcos. If you like
I think it's on Netflix.
Crazy, such a wild ride, yes. So on Netflix, if you like a wild ride, fun, exciting, it is violent. I will tell you that, in the beginning. But there are a lot of parts where there's just a lot of talking and they're trying to figure out how to catch these people, which, they get hidden by the government, which is really crazy. So
this is crazy.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. Check it out. Narcos, Mexico, or Narcos, Colombia.
Does it say Colombia? I think the one that just says Narcos is about Colombia.
That's about Colombia, but the other one says Narco Mexico.
Okay, yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Nicole, thank you so
Yes.
much for being with us today. I hope we didn't bum people out too much about sugar.
I hope we didn't either, but I think that, we got to make sugar fun again, right? It's getting to the point where it's like, it's not a novelty because it's in everything. So if we can kind of just distance ourselves from it, then enjoy it when we want to enjoy it. That's going to make it so much better.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The fact that it is involved in so many things that, to make it fun again is to have the sugar and go, wow, this was delicious. And then, you don't eat any more of that.
It's not a treat.
Yes.
It's not a special treat. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, dang.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Please come back. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being on our show. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Betty Jo, for being a host with me the most, my beautiful wife. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time on Dang.
Thanks. Bye.
Dang is produced by my wife, Betty Jo Bridges, in collaboration with Star Worldwide Network Studios, and edited by our daughter, Adelie Ann.
She's also the musician responsible for our theme music, so go check out Adelie Ann wherever you stream your music. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Send us your suggestions at dangpodcast.com.
Do me a favor. Please subscribe and rate our podcast to make it easier for others to find. Have a great week.
Yeah,